when the inflammation went away, the pain remained on the right-hand side. And that's still there to this day. And I think that walk was 2010. So for a long time, it was fibromyalgia. And so I would say fibromyalgia to people because that sounds more medical and people believe that a bit more than saying chronic pain. Chronic pain, people think, is a made-up thing. The trifecta of insomnia, stress and anxiety all sort of like come round and boot your pain up the arse, and then it goes, we're playing, are we? And it joins in the game as well. So it's all very interesting. But yeah, if I haven't slept well, definitely, my pain levels are higher. If I'm really stressed, yes, my pain levels are higher.
So Petra, it's great to finally be opposite you, the 2022 version of opposite you. Maybe one day we'll all get to meet in real life. It'll be beautiful. Today, we're going to be talking primarily about chronic pain, should I say. And you, unlike most of my guests, I have to summarize and make an actual little title that is what I think we're going to be talking about. But you suggested the phrase to me of "it's all in your head," and I made sure I put it in quotes so that no one thought that either you or I was saying that. But we're going to obviously get into why that sentence and why that statement is important. Is that the right word? But problematic? I don't know. But first of all, could you just give us a brief introduction to your experiences with chronic pain, kind of like where it all started and what the journey's been like along the way, right? And, in your own words, in your own time, and I'll then only interrupt if I feel I need to.
Cool. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, well, hi, I'm Petra. Hey, everyone. It's lovely to be here, actually, sort of chatting to you as well, Dave. Obviously, I sit in your chat quite a lot and all that sort of thing. So this is a bit weird. I'm talking to a streamer. Even though I am one, I still find it...
You are one.
Yeah. So, it's my journey with chronic pain is quite a long one now. I realised in 2020 that if my pain was a person, I could legally take them out for a drink. So about 20 years ago was when I started my pain journey, although I didn't realise that at the time.
Okay.
I was pregnant with my second child and my body fell apart, essentially. I was really bad at being pregnant, didn't work very well. And I could barely walk, back pain, all the rest of it. Had the baby, still not well, still a lot of pain. But then it would be pain in different places. And this is often common with people starting out with chronic pain, is that you'll get pain in different places. So, and sometimes it was for a reason and sometimes it wasn't. So I had to have an operation on my shoulder in my late 20s for a condition that normally happens to men in their late 50s. And so that had been there for a lot longer than it normally would be because the GPs weren't looking for it. So my body slowly over time, through all these different situations, became sensitized to pain.
Right.
I was diagnosed with chronic pain about 10 years ago. So officially, according to my medical record, I've been suffering from chronic pain for 10 years, but in actual fact, it's much nearer 20 when I actually look back. And so for that 20 years, basically, there hasn't been a day where I haven't been in pain. And it's a bit rubbish, but it is what it is. And I've gone through a long journey to do with how do I live with my pain rather than suffer my pain.
Yeah.
And that has been, and it fits in so well with a lot of the stuff that you talk about on your stream and a lot of the stuff you talk about, because most of it is about mindset for me, and how that can affect your pain levels. And it's remarkable how closely the two things are actually connected.
Yeah, yeah. And this is, I suppose, the expression I often use for it is that, like, when it comes to mental health, we're not talking about finding a cure here. We're talking about managing. We're talking about managing the way we view it or the way we experience it, changing our own subjective experience, as opposed to fixing the root cause. And if anyone accuses me of trying to fix the root cause, they're obviously not listening, because that's not what I do. I am not a doctor. But But yeah, so I want to jump back to kind of, when you first started experiencing it, what was the kind of, when you first went to the doctors about that, was it during the pregnancy? Was it after the pregnancy that you kind of, you kind of started saying, I've got this pain? One question before that, which is probably a little bit quicker. Before that second pregnancy, had sort of random unknown, like those type of pains that come out of nowhere or have no real explanation. Was there any of that before then, or is it?
No, there wasn't, because I was quite young when I had my kids. So I was only sort of in my mid-20s when I had my second child. So before that, I was still relatively young, fit, healthy, and you bounce back from things when you're in your 20s remarkably better than you do when you're in your 40s, as I am now. So it's a lot. So no, there wasn't really any of that. There was occasionally, but it was always for a good reason. So if I'd been out on the dance floor all night, I might be a bit achy the next morning because I'd been leaping around, but there was a good reason for it, and it was normal pain. It was your body going, hang on a minute, slow down a tiny bit. Now you're good to go again. Crack on.
Yeah.
So yeah, before that wasn't a thing, and I put most of the sensitization to pain down to the shoulder operation, but the pregnancy definitely will have played into it a little bit, because obviously you get worn, your body gets my body got completely trashed.
Yeah.
So I lost weight through my pregnancies. I was horribly sick. I couldn't keep, and I had big babies as well. So they took every ounce of goodness that I ate, those babies took. And I got none of that. So I was a physical wreck by the time I'd finished doing all that. And then I had this shoulder issue where I was in pain with my shoulder for over 4 years and kept going to the GP and kept being told, you've slept on it funny. It's fine. Take some ibuprofen. You'll be all right. And I kept going, no, that's not what's happened. I know what it feels like to sleep on it funny. This one is different. And it wasn't until one of the GPs said, what did the x-rays show? And I said, nobody sent me for x-rays. And within 3 months of that date, I was having an operation because I had calcium within my tendons.
Right.
And it was the build-up of that pain. So my body was in pain then for 4 years. And after you've had pain for more than 6 months, it's counted as chronic pain. Yeah. Chronic doesn't mean very bad. It means long-term.
Yeah.
And so my body had got used to being in pain and more sensitive. And so it's more likely to feel pain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to say, I'm literally listening to a book called When the Body Says No at the minute by Dr. Gabor Mate. And he talks about how once a person has experienced pain for a prolonged period of time, or actually heightened stress, heightened anxiety, heightened anything that is getting your adrenal system into overdrive, your pain threshold actually comes down as well. So your, what's the word? I think it was hypervigilance might have been the expression that he used. Like, your basically pain receptors are hypervigilant to like noticing anything that's there. And
not only that, but your body produces more pain receptors.
Right.
Because those ones are overloaded. So not only are they hypervigilant, but your body's going, oh, they can't cope with this workload. We need more of them.
Wonder why my body, when I give it loads of caffeine, doesn't turn around and say, he needs a lot more energy. Let's give him actual energy. Or actually, forget that. Why my bloody serotonin and dopamine receptors aren't working correctly? It is interesting to kind of, actually the word that pops to my brain is unfair, but we're going to, because we've said it is what it is. It's like, I'm not sure I understand either, Siri, stop listening. But basically it is interesting, like, why one brain can regulate the neurotransmitters better than others, why one body can regulate pain threshold better than others. And it's one of those weird things that people actually, you'd almost think, well, I suppose the difference between chronic and acute stress, right? So acute pain, like if people exposing themselves to acute stress and then recovering, their stress threshold increases. A person exposed to chronic stress with zero recovery, their ability for stress decreases. And it's the same sort of thing where, like, I guess with pain, right? If someone was in acute pain, their threshold, like, people talk about improving their pain tolerance or whatever, and that's done by acute exposure to pain, where they kind of whereas that chronic way, it's that whole body's basically, I'm fatigued from trying to deal with all of this. So, and I mean, that's literally the entire premise of that book. It's like, the title actually does it justice. It's just like when the body says no, it's like too much stress, bad. Too much stress, body say no. Like that's, and that's kind of like the essence of it, really. So after the shoulder injury, after the surgery, what came next there? Like, so what between that and your diagnosis, I'm quite interested in that phase where obviously you were still getting pain, you were still getting all these unanswerable questions. What was the kind of dialogue, the experience with the doctors and such like in that period?
I was still very active at that point. So I was a roller derby referee. I did a lot of walking. I did a lot of stuff. I did a lot of things. I was still very active, and so a lot of the time I would put the pain that I was suffering down to, I'd been knocked off my skates at roller derby, or I'd walked too far, or this, that, and the other. And so it was kind of the point at which I started to get this diagnosis was the point after I had I did a 26-mile walk to raise money for breast cancer charities. And I was a bit of an idiot and didn't train properly for it, and ended up with bursitis in both of my hips. Bursitis is an inflammation of the pad that protects your hip from sort of rubbing against itself, and they got inflamed on both sides. And then when the inflammation went away, the pain remained on the right hand side. And that's still there to this day. And I think that walk was 2010. And so after that walk, they were treating the bursitis, like I was saying, but the pain hasn't gone away. So there were injections, there was steroid this, there was physios, there was this, that, and the other. And eventually I was referred to a pain clinic. Mm-hmm. And that was where I was given a diagnosis of chronic pain. Now, at that point, that was still relatively new for somebody to be given a diagnosis of chronic pain in itself, because up till then, really, although there'd been research before that, and the work of Laura Mosley down in Australia is fascinating to look at. He's one of the world leaders in pain science, and it's fascinating to look at his stuff. And he does really accessible videos that make it really easy for people to understand. And but I was given this diagnosis of chronic pain, and it confused a lot of people, because they'd say, yes, but why? What's the pain from? So no, it just is pain. Yeah. It's not, because acute pain is there for a reason. It's your body's alarm system. It's telling you to stop. Yeah. It's giving you a warning. Whereas it's just kind of like, it's just constant bells going off, alarm system all the time with the chronic pain. And it's sort of managing to quieten those alarm bells is the key to living with it, rather than just being deafened by them. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the more I speak to different people with different conditions, the more it seems like that we actually have a bit more of an understanding about some of these things in different areas. So a prime example of this, I spoke to a neuroscientist called Dean Burnett about 6 months ago. It was probably about 2 years ago. I've lost all track of time. I feel like it was recently. And we talked about how a person goes from specific anxieties like social anxiety or health anxiety and such into generalized anxiety. And generalized anxiety basically comes from you are anxious about so many different things that your body just gets used to being anxious. And specifically, I'll get this wrong, I feel like it's your hippocampus. It might not be it's whatever the area of your brain. Your amygdala. No, it's your amygdala, maybe. Whichever. Anyway, the area of your brain that's literally right there in the middle, the front, but gets trained like a muscle. And just like what you said before about more pain receptors, like your pain receptors, let's recruit more of them. Let's make the ones that are there more sensitive. Well, that's how muscles respond to training as well. It's like, let's break down muscle fibers, make more of them, and make the existing ones stronger. It's like, that's how the amygdala, and if it's not that, people correct me, but that's how that part of the brain responds as well. It's like, I'm going to now be anxious over nothing. And you get a person that may have 6 months ago known what they were anxious about. Like you were saying there, you might have known, you got the roller derby stuff, that okay, that makes sense. It makes sense that I know I went over on my ankle there, so it makes sense for that to be there. But then you get this pain that now your body's just like, well, we're giving you pain because that's what you know. Like that's all we know how to do. Like it's and I hope, this is going to lead into a question that's going to be a bit later on about whether there are any improvements that are coming out now for people that with this, because as you said, 10 years ago, that it was very rare for that diagnosis to happen. I'd like to think that 10 years since then. In fact, actually, even though this is going to disjoint the actual order of the story in my head, let's go into that question now so I don't forget it. Have there been any improvements, whether that's kind of like through treatment or through even the way the community, I imagine there's been improvements in the community, right? We all talk to each other more now. We have our peer support networks and such now, and we have more. Let's go with Spoonie amygdala is correct. Yes. Let's go with Spoonie advocates, because I know I've got a few Spoonie advocates in chat. Has there been any improvements in that time between the kind of care that is available?
There's a lot more peer support out there, certainly. And the peer support is changing. When I was first diagnosed, generally when you went to support groups, it was just a lot of woe is me. I'm in pain. There's nothing I can do about it, because people hadn't been given the tools to deal with it. More and more now, there's a lot of stuff out there that is, we're in pain, but we're still doing this, we're still doing that. There's stuff we can get on with. There are things we can do. We can get gain a lot from linking together and doing a lot of things. I've been doing a lot of stuff with. There's a thing online called the Footsteps Festival, which you can find via Twitter. Which is it started off. It was going to be a small local thing for a local pain clinic that was going to start in March 2020. Obviously, that didn't happen. But what did happen is they ended up online. And it was going to be till the end of the year, but they're still going now because it's been really successful in linking people together. And they put on all these different events. There are sessions looking at journal papers on pain and how pain relates to all sorts of things. But there are also stuff like craft sessions and just coming together to chat and being with each other type sessions. There's sessions on mindfulness. There are sessions on mindset. There are sessions on cooking, but specifically aimed at people with chronic pain, because often you don't have the energy because you're dealing with chronic pain all day, so you're completely fatigued. So you don't have the energy to cook something. And so it's a session on they call it cookfulness, and it's cooking mindfully. But doing it in a way that people with chronic pain can manage. Or there's book clubs and there's all this way of linking together online now that there just wasn't 10 years ago, obviously. There's a lot less of a reliance on painkillers. And actually, we're discovering that painkillers are often one of the worst things you can start to do with chronic pain. Because what it does is it dulls the alarm signals that your brain is sending. And so then the brain sends more of them. And actually, you end up increasing your pain levels over time by taking more and more of certain drugs.
The pain becomes a toddler. The more you put your earmuffs on this, the more you put your fingers in your ears, the louder it screams. I am glad that that's improving, and I have no business being as hopeful as I am, to be honest. I'm a very hopeful person. I don't know why. Literally, life has tried its best to beat it out of me, but I am very hopeful that the more we talk about these things and the more awareness we get on them, all it takes is for one day the right person or the right people to be aware of it. The person with the great mind about medication, or the person with the great mind about psychology that suddenly takes an interest in a topic that they hadn't done before. Or a collective group of people that share what works for them. And that often I find doesn't always give another person their 100% solution. But if 10 people give me 10% of my solution, and I make a cheeky little cocktail or put a nice little tasty meal together full of different solutions, like those things can very much help. Right. I'm going to jump back in time chronologically. So diagnosis. Different people report different things about the point at which they get a diagnosis. A lot of us say it gives us clarity. A lot of us say it gives us more questions. Where were you on this? What was that moment of diagnosis like for you?
Well, it's a bit odd as well, because one person told me I had fibromyalgia.
Okay.
Which I do believe I do have. But I've recently discovered that was never put on my medical record.
Oh, right.
And then the diagnosis on my medical record is chronic pain.
Yeah.
But I do believe I have both. I believe that's it. But actually, in a way, that's quite good, because if you have something like fibromyalgia on your medical record, everything's blamed on the fibromyalgia. And so to not have it on the medical record is actually quite helpful.
That's okay. Everything's blamed on my weight.
Well, I used to get that too, and then I've lost lots of weight. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they say the next time I physically see a GP face to face and what they'll blame it on at that point. Yeah. And it's, I've lost the track of what I was going to say.
Sorry, I shouldn't.
No, it's not you. It's not you. I have foggy-headed moments.
Yeah, you were saying that like having fibromyalgia on your record means that everything gets attributed to the fibromyalgia.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for a long time, it was fibromyalgia. And so I would say fibromyalgia to people because that sounds more medical and people believe that a bit more than saying chronic pain. Chronic pain, people think, is a made-up thing, which it isn't. It's an actual diagnosis. But, it doesn't sound medical. And so people don't believe it, which is really odd. But yeah, so when I was given these diagnoses of fibromyalgia first and then chronic pain later, it was more just a sense of, right, well, we know what that is now. Now I can do some research and work out what we can do.
Yeah.
I spent quite a while kind of being grumpy that I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. So I couldn't keep playing the roller derby because I was just in too much pain. I couldn't keep doing the things. I can't keep swimming. People say, oh, it's good for you to go swimming. But actually, when I get out of the water, the fibromyalgia and the pain just kind of, it weighs me back down again. It's wonderful while I'm in the water, but I need somebody with me so I can get dressed after I've been. So all of this exercise became an utter nightmare. And I wanted to do these things because I was quite active. So I spent a long time being grumpy, several years being grumpy about these diagnoses because everything was wrong. Nothing was like it was before, and I didn't like it. And and it's just really, really frustrating. So it was kind of, now I know what I can do about it. But at the same time, it was, but I don't want to do it. Yeah. So there was a bit of both, really, a bit of both.
Okay.
But primarily, I was grumpy about it, if I'm going to be completely honest. I was grumpy about it. I didn't want it. Am I all right to swear?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I probably was, but I better check before. So basically I was like, this is just complete and utter shit and I don't like it. I don't want to be here. And so I'm going to spend time being grumpy about the fact I'm here because I don't want to be here. And it was actually being at the pain clinic that kind of started to turn that around. Because although whilst I was under the care of the pain clinic, I found my pain got worse, bizarrely, because I was concentrating more on it afterwards. Because having a chronic condition like chronic pain isn't like having a chronic condition like diabetes.
Yeah.
Having a chronic condition like diabetes, you get regular checkups, you're under the care of consultants constantly, you get regular nurse visits, you get regular, constantly, you get your medications for free, you get all of this is there. With chronic pain, you go through the pain clinic and then you deal with it, off you go. And there aren't regular check-ins and there aren't regular things you can do. And so it just gets to the point. And so while I was at the pain clinic, it was very much, I felt like, because I was thinking about my pain all the time, I was concentrating on it. But actually, once I put those things into action later, that's when it started to I started to turn things around a bit and started to actually be able to get out and do things.
Yeah. So with that, what was Okay, actually, I keep on thinking of me questions, and I'm like, no, I want to put a different one chronologically today. Was there stuff that you tried that didn't work before we get to the stuff that you tried that did?
Yeah, well, first they try and give you painkillers of various descriptions, and I'm highly susceptible to all forms of medication, like ridiculously so, to the point I've hallucinated on tea bought in Sainsbury's. So they gave me a really, really low dose of amitriptyline, which basically I was taking it at 9 o'clock at night and I was still zombified at midday the following day.
Wow.
And I had young children at that point. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. The safety of my children, I'd rather be in pain than potentially jeopardize the safety of my children, which is what's taking it. And so I realized I had to learn to live without the painkillers. Amitriptyline I tried, and then they tried me on something else, and that had similar effects because, screwy brain chemistry, not like the things. So I realized I was going to have to do it without. And once I realized that, it almost made it easier to say, right, okay, I'm going to have to look at alternative solutions and see what's out there. And that was where the pain clinic kicked in, and they do a lot of the mindfulness stuff and almost like CBT type stuff, really, and retraining your brain to think about things differently.
Yeah. So what for you in that situation did help?
It's difficult to put my finger on any one thing. It's been an accumulation over time where now I'm a very different person to the one that was given that diagnosis 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have changed, but also the way that I view my pain has changed. So I can remember in one of the many talking therapies that I went through, it's describing the pain as a monster clawing at me all the time. Whereas now I see it more as like a little floof ball that's around and slightly irritating, a bit like a tribble, but is just but it's manageable because it's only little, and I can stick it in my pocket and get on with things. And so my view of it has changed.
Yeah.
But I have changed more than anything, I think, through that process.
Yeah. We've got a lot of kind of thing in the chat with a couple of people saying about loving CBT. Now, whenever CBT comes up, and we do get very mixed opinions of it. And again, I think it's because it's often, especially here in the UK, it's often flouted as the one and only. It's like the one, and it's not the one and only. It's just the NHS needed to attribute a budget somewhere, and they needed to pick one thing. But the main thing I always like to remind people of with that is the fact that it works differently for different people, and it works differently for different conditions. And what I said before about that cocktail or that meal of solutions, right, is that some people like exercise and diet came up before. And for me, exercise and diet, they help massively, especially when I get consistent with them. They're not everything for me, but they do help massively. For other people, no benefit whatsoever. They change the exercise. In fact, some people, they introduce exercise and feel utterly miserable for doing it, and it's, but it's like you'll get some people that'll do exercise and that's all it takes for that person to suddenly be like, that's it, the clouds have lifted now. And then that person is usually the one that becomes the fanatic about it, like going off and saying, yes, I'm going to tell everybody that exercise cured me and now it's going to cure them. And I really don't like it when things are put out there like that, because actually they end up causing more harm than good. Because when you set the bar at 100%, even if someone hits 90%, it's like, it's a failure for them. And it's like, so I was really pleased when you said, I can't quite put my finger. I mean, okay, as a podcast host, I wasn't pleased because I wanted you to like literally drop in a thing right there and be like, yes, this is the one, this is the thing. So from that perspective, but at the same time, as a fellow Spoonie advocate, as someone who lives with an invisible illness also, I'm so glad to hear that actually, yeah, it's been a combination of things, because I think more people need to know that. More people need to know that, like, medication on its own might not be the one thing that sorts things out. Therapy for you might just get you 10% of the way there. Exercise might contribute this. And and doing things, which actually leads me into my next question, which is, with a lot of the different conditions we talk about on here, even though, again, it's not the be all and end all, like managing your stress levels overall tends to kind of, so are there any kind of like things there as like, is it like on days that you've not slept as well, or in days that your stress levels are higher, that the pain's like, right, well, I'm really there now? Like the floof ball sharpens its teeth.
The trifecta of insomnia, stress, and anxiety all sort of like come round and boot your pain up the arse, and then it goes, we're playing, are we? And it joins in the game as well. So it's all very interesting. But yeah, if I haven't slept well, definitely, my pain levels are higher. If I'm really stressed, yes, my pain levels are higher.
Yeah.
The anxiety is a side effect of the pain in a lot of ways, in that for a long time you get very kind of, but if I do that, it's going to hurt. And so you get used to being anxious about, but it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, they're all tied in together. And yeah. So yeah, definitely they all play in. And my pain is definitely worse on days when I'm stressed or I haven't slept. Sleep is one of the big things. And actually it can become a bit of a circle, because if you haven't slept well, your pain is higher and then it's harder to sleep. So then your pain increases. So then it's harder to sleep, and you go circling round and down and down and down and trying to sort of cut. I'm better at noticing that when it first happens and allowing myself to go and have a nap, for example, in the middle of the day, which was like, but old people do that. And I refuse to be old.
I'm beginning to embrace the middle of the day now.
Oh, I love a nap now. There's nothing nicer. I love a lovely sunny room. If the sun's coming in, because the sun comes in through the front of our house into the bedroom, and if I can have a nap with the curtains open and the sun streaming in, it's just heavenly. It's one of my favourite things to do. A nap in the sunshine is amazing.
I quite like falling asleep when you're not trying. I mean, like, obviously not while I'm in the middle of work or anything, but like I love the feeling of falling asleep during a movie, even when I'm like, and there's actually something called paradoxical intent, where if you tell yourself fall asleep, you stay awake. But if you start watching a movie and you feel a bit tired and you're like, oh my God, don't fall asleep. The next thing is like, and I've told my wife to, like, if I do fall asleep and you're in the movie, don't wake me up for it, like, because obviously that's what I want. But and that's when my depression kicked off on Wednesday, and I thought I couldn't sleep. I put some TV on that I didn't mind falling asleep during, and I just had that feeling, because like it's that to me where you're naturally just drifting off without overthinking it. Like it's the exact opposite of that feeling where you're up all night and you just can't, like, no matter, or even with your best tools that night, you can't seem to slow that down. Okay, what was the other question I just thought of? Right, we'll go back to the title of the stream, because obviously I want to make sure we get that in there. What is the significance to you of the phrase, it is all in your head?
Well, it's a phrase that's often used for people with chronic conditions. And I'm sure a lot of people in the chat will have had people say, but you make people say, it's all in your head. It's not, and implying it's not real.
Yeah.
And
so's headaches, so often, and people have had headaches. Those people have had headaches.
Exactly.
That's all in your head.
That's exactly the thing. So pain is 100% created in your brain.
Yeah.
It is. That's scientific fact. Pain is created in your brain. Otherwise, how would people have phantom limb pain?
Yeah.
So pain is completely in your head, but that doesn't mean it isn't real. And that is if there was one thing that really needs changing, it's this idea that it's all in your head means it isn't real. And if we could change that, I think a lot of us that are spoonies would have a far better quality of life, because people would realize that, yes, it is all in my head, but it's also very, very real. Yeah. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there.
Yeah. Well, it's like if someone's having like liver failure, that's all in your liver. It's like, it's all. Yeah, if I stomp on someone's foot, don't worry about it. It's all in your foot. Yeah. It's like where that's the kind of I suppose with mental health, I kind of wish it wasn't in my head sometimes. And actually, it's not all in my head. A lot of it's in my heart. A lot of it's in my chest. A lot of it's in my stomach. You know, a lot of it's in like a pair of cement shoes at the bottom of my feet that are dragging me down and making it harder to move. You know, there's it's not like it might be starting from my head, but it is completely and utterly debilitating. And I mean, I think the one positive side to that is a lot of the solutions that you've come across, they are all from your head as well. Not just all in your head, but they're from your head, and they are from your mind's ability to overcome, or your mind's ability to reframe, or to look at things in a different way, like that visualization of, like, rather than it being the monster, it being the floofy little thing. It's like that. I find that like little bits of wordplay and stuff like that actually make a huge amount of difference. You know, no, and I'll try 2 examples of this. Is once upon a time, I said something along the lines of, to my wife, and my wife is from Latvia, so she doesn't know English expressions. So, well, she does know a lot of them now. It's great when she calls someone a knob jockey. But it's like, I just nearly made you spit your tea, didn't I? So it was bad timing. But so I said, I was stressed out one evening, and I was just like, and I said, I need to just go home and work until the cows come home. And she was just like, but we don't live on a dairy, so there's no cows. And I was just like, oh. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, I had 13 appointments back to back when I was doing this project called A Life a Day. I was trying to give 1 hour a day to a different person, and I couldn't do that every single calendar day. But some days I would do 5, 6, 10. You know, and this one day, it was one Monday, I'd blocked out entirely for that, like 13 back-to-back hours. And I just said, I feel like I'm getting in the ring with a fresh opponent every single hour. And then she turned around and just used that metaphor back to me, and she said, yeah, but you're going to win each round, and you're going to go into the next one feeling more and more energized from the streak of wins that you're getting. And honestly, like that she said to me as I was driving to my first appointment, it's like that day just went by like a flash. And it's like little kind of so if the sort of reason for me saying this is, if you actually hear somebody saying something like, you know, it feels like I'm bashing my head against a brick wall, it's like, you know, it's like, maybe say to that person, right, well, let's step back from that wall for a second and look at it from a different perspective. Work with the person's metaphor, because your metaphor was if it being a beast and then turn it into a floofy thing. It's like, you know, if someone has said, oh, it's not a beast, just think of it as a cloud. It's like, oh, whatever you say, you know, it's like, it's worked within what your frame, what your window of the world is. And that reframing has actually helped.
Absolutely. And I often will, with the anxiety, and specifically my anxiety, I have given a name. It's a creature. It's called Horus, and I like it. It's a small, fluffy purple. A lot of the things that I imagine are fluffy, round things.
A lot of things I imagine are purple.
fluffy purple, But and when I'm really, really anxious, I will literally mime throwing it at the wall and yell, fuck off, Horus, at the top of my voice. And it's surprisingly cathartic.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it sounds ridiculous. And when I say it to people that aren't kind of in this kind of sort of spoony world, they look at me as if to say, what? And I'm going, next time you're really anxious, try it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we do one called the bullshit balloon.
Surprisingly well.
Like the bullshit balloon is like, I don't know if you've seen me do it on stream, because I've got like loads of balloons just on the floor that are just flowing around because I never clean up after myself. But basically you get a balloon, and whatever thoughts that you're trying to get out of your head, you imagine you're blowing them into the balloon, and then you keep on blowing them into the balloon until the balloon's pretty full. Don't overblow it. That's scary. I get quite scared over blowing balloons. And then what you do is you hold on to it, trying to not let it out, and then you just let it fart around the room, and it's cathartic with a fart instead of a fart. You know, it's like with an F instead of a TH. It's like these things. It's like they can make such a difference. Like another little one that I like to use is if I feel like I've got no energy, I do the whole Spartans, what is your profession? Oh thing from 300. I use energy that I've not got, and it sends signals to my body that I'm very energetic, and it's a great way to kind of get me fired up and stuff. Speaking of analogies, it's made me remember my other question. Yay, my train of thought came back. It's that very rarely happens. Are there, especially when it comes to speaking to non-spoonies, speaking to other people that don't get it, are there any ways that you found to put these things? Is there any way that you found to tell other people that don't experience this in a way that helps them get it? I really hope the answer is yes.
Very much. That very, very much depends on the person. Some people are not going to get it. Doesn't matter what you say, they're not going to get it.
Yeah.
So those people can get in the bin. They're people that I've slowly got rid of from my life, and I now don't deal with those people.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way of dealing with those. I used to describe it to my kids, because my kids are in their early 20s, more or less. And so they don't ever remember me not being in pain.
Right.
So my eldest has vague memories from being very, very small of me being able to do a lot of stuff with her. But they basically don't really remember me not being in pain. And I remember explaining it to my kids, who are both introverts. So like to be with people sometimes, but then they need to recharge.
Yeah.
They're both very much like that.
So much same.
And so I described it to them like, when you're around somebody's house and you're with them and you feel like you just need to go and hide for a bit. Now imagine you can't. That is how I deal. That's my pain all of the time. So I get to that point where I can't, I want it to just go away, but I can't get away from it. And so that's why I get so exhausted. That's why I get so tired. That's why I find it difficult to deal with. And that's why I react sometimes in the way that I do. And that kind of made it to, they kind of understood that, because, they both had friends that they loved, but had, could be quite intense, because these friends were very extrovert and very in your face. And so they understood that kind of, I love them lots, but sometimes I just need to get away. Yeah. But if I couldn't, how would I feel? And they kind of understood that as an idea. Yeah. And just trying to, it's difficult to, you can't really explain chronic pain to somebody that hasn't been in chronic pain. It's one of those things that it's not like, because often chronic pain isn't intense. It can be very low lying and it just rumbles along under the surface. Yeah. And so I'm not in a lot of pain, but I'm always in that not very much pain. Yeah. And then it can flare up. And so people think, but it's not a lot of pain, so it can't be that bad. But it's a bit like water torture. And you get that drip, 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 drip. And it kind of, the constant nature of it is what really makes it difficult.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I kind of, one of the things that I did to deal with my social anxiety was the fact that I never really realized I had social anxiety until I was in a relationship with a social butterfly. Because before that, I could always just leave whenever I wanted to. Like there was no one, like, my first wife was less socially inclined than I am. So usually she wanted to leave before I did. And then I was single for a while, and at that point I just left whenever I wanted to leave. And my wife now, she's a very sociable person, and she loves being around people, and she loves spending time with people. And she used to quite like being the straggler, the last one on the dance floor, and not being able to leave like flared my social anxiety up so much. And then we actually ended up talking about it and then it became the rule that, if I need to leave at any point, I can. Because I would leave, and then she didn't really understand what was going on with that. So at first, and then when it became you can leave whenever you want, and I still get social anxiety before going to things now, but I very rarely have those flare-ups when I'm actually at them, because I know that just knowing that I can get away from this is enough. So the idea of, as soon as you said that, I don't know if you saw it, but like my pupils dilated and everything. I was just like, oh my God, like not being able, because we were at a friend's house last weekend, and like you were at someone else's house for that time. So you feel like, and I just took myself off to the room for like 10, 15 minutes a couple of times throughout the course of the day, which historically would have been unheard of, you know. It had been deemed as antisocial. But I know that that's my way of making sure that I can actually spend the rest of the time with them that they want to. And it's going to be a more enjoyable time for all of us. But yeah, the idea of not being able to escape it just sounds impossible. Like it sounds, and again, getting someone to try and understand that. Like, and I often find that it's like, okay, what do people understand without chronic pain? What do people understand without depression? Well, people understand what it's like to have toothache. Like, and okay, imagine that toothache never goes. And I know you said it's not probably as intense as a toothache all the time. Sometimes you probably do get those intense moments, but like imagine that's there, or imagine that low rumbling headache that some days you haven't shifted it all day, and then you finally get to like home and take a couple of ibuprofen and it finally shifts it. Well, imagine that nothing shifts that.
Imagine that for 10 years.
Imagine that, yeah. And that's the whole that's the whole thing is I think it's you need to have been in a storm that seems like it's got no end in order to know what a storm that's got no end feels like. And for anyone even who has had long-lasting storms that don't last for 10 years, but they last for 3 months or even 2 weeks or whatever it might be, your brain tricks you into thinking this is going to be forever. And then that multiplies the intensity of it as well. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me what you're saying. But again, it's like, I that's one of my key things now. And I'm actually going to be starting. So chat will get used to the fact that I'm going to start asking that question a lot more, because one of the things, I think the most important things we can do is try and figure out how to get people that don't experience this to like, maybe if they can't give us empathy, at least be able to give us sympathy. You know, it's like be able to kind of go to accept, okay, that does sound really hard, and let's eradicate this whole, well, it's all in your head. Can you know, are you sure you're just imagining it, or like whatever? It's like we need that compassion. Yeah. We need less of those people, like you said, that, you know, you then have to kind of just be like, right, there's no place for you in my life, because quite frankly, I already don't have the energy. So I don't want to be spending what energy I don't have explaining something to you that you won't understand.
Yeah, or refuse to understand in some cases, definitely. And I was going to say something else then, and it's just wandered off.
So that's allowed to happen around here.
It's just what goes on. It's just what goes on.
What was the name of that group again that you said on Twitter, was it?
Footsteps Festival.
Footsteps Festival. And is there anybody else out there like making content around this topic that you think deserves a bit of a shout out?
Well, there's the physio that who's been researching it for the longest time, who's called Lorimer Mosley. And he makes really good sort of 5 minute, it's understanding pain in 5 minutes. And it's one of these drawn videos with a voiceover, but it really explains it very, very well. And there's also a website that the Footsteps Festival are linked in with called Live Well with Pain. And there's a researcher here in the UK, like the top researcher here in the UK is called Cormac Ryan. And he does very, very accessible talks as well. They're all brilliant.
Excellent. Chat, if you've got any questions for Petra, please get them in now, whilst we kind of just wrap up over here. So sort of the final question really for you is, where can people find... Actually, no, let's scroll back from that 1 second. We've not even talked about your stream. So, and actually, is what you're wearing one of yours?
No, it isn't. This is my daughter made this for me.
Oh, amazing.
Because she's a crafter as well. But I did make one identical, but in different colours for her. And we both got the same pattern and the same yarn, but in different colours. And I knitted one for her and she knitted one for me. And it didn't at all become a race.
For anyone who's listening to the audio,
but I won. That's all I'm saying.
Is it crocheted?
It's a knitted one.
That's knitted. All right.
Knitted shawl.
I do not know the difference. Well, I know the difference when I see someone doing it, depending on what they got in their hands. But when I've seen a finished product, I'm like, I don't know the difference. So what role does, like, in your pain management, what role does crafting play for you?
Oh, crafting is absolutely essential. Crochet saved my life. So when things were really, really bad, really stressful situation, pain levels soaring when I was in that grumpy phase as well, I started to crochet, and I made this scarf. For those that are just listening, it's a black and purple scarf. It's not very wide because I got bored. So it's black and purple striping, just a long scarf, very simple crochet thing. And it kept me alive, literally, because I was so stressed that I could have done something very, very stupid. But instead I concentrated on just doing the next stitch. And I was just going to do the next stitch and then just the next stitch. And it put me absolutely in the moment of just making this. And I keep this because it reminds me of where I was and how far I've come. And it's a symbol to me for, you know, you might not feel like you're doing anything, but actually if you just take it one stitch at a time, it can make the world of difference. Yeah, the absolute world of difference. But now, so it started, that's where the crafting started. But then now it's because it keeps me in the moment and it stops me concentrate on my pain quite as much and makes me think about other things. So I always have a gazillion projects on the go. So as I'm sat here, I can see 1, 2, 3 unfinished projects just in this room. And that's before we get into the rest of the house out there. But just the process of making the stitches does me the world of good, because if I'm not doing that, I'm generally doom scrolling. Let's not get into that.
Let's not get into that.
And so guilty. But if I've been knitting rather than doom scrolling, I don't feel like I've done a lot, but I've got something to show for it at the end. Yeah. And actually that does my brain a lot of good. That produces that dopamine hit that I want, even if I'm not getting it immediately. It produces that later. And instead of having a day where I've spent all day just scrolling and then I think, oh, well, I've wasted that day. What a load of shit I am. Yeah. I look and think, well, I've not done a lot, but at least I've done this. And the difference that makes to your brain. Yeah. Yeah. Immense. Oh, absolutely immense.
But sorry, go on. I was going to say, was it something that you found through the suggestion of, like, you taking up mindfulness and you found it that way, or did you find it and that was kind of your entry to mindfulness? The second one. So I found it and I kind of used it in a mindful way rather than it being introduced to me via mindfulness. Yeah. Yeah, and that's an important thing for a lot of people, is that what a lot of people don't realize is that you can do mindfulness with anything that brings you into the moment that you're in and forces you to focus on. At 6 years old, I learned to play the piano, because I watched Big, and I saw them do the thing the way they're doing it, and I became obsessed with that and sat in my room on my own for like hours, playing on like a 1980s Casio keyboard. Which the piano probably sounded nothing like a piano on, but and that was mindfulness. And then I collected like Warhammer models and painted those, and that was mindfulness. And no one ever told me that I was doing mindfulness. But if I look at all the things that even playing video games, reading novels, all of these things that I did as a kid that I enjoyed, it was because I was doing mindfulness by accident. And then when I started playing the guitar later on, I would often just write these instrumental things and just that ended up being quite loopy, and like loopy in terms of they are looped, not loopy as in terms of weird. Yeah. And I kind of just get lost playing this one piece for like 15 minutes or whatever. And that's the whole thing, is you can do mindfulness in anything. You can listen to a piece of music mindfully. Go and listen to this ruins it for some people. They'll go and listen to your favorite song and try and pick out whatever instrument's playing. Like, try and see if there's something in that song you can notice that you've never noticed before. Because here's something, and I know, and this might be like minuscule advice for some people, or it might really help for others, is that your brain can only focus on so many things at one time. So this works for me with both anxiety and depression, and it might work for people with pain, that if you give it you can't switch it off, but you can change the channel. And when you change the channel to something else, the intensity of the other thoughts or the other feelings reduces.
Funnily enough, the time most recently where I've been in the least pain was March and April of 2020.
When you had
when we
a
were
lot
all
of
locked
news to
down.
look at.
Well, we were all locked down. Nobody wanted anything from me.
Oh, yeah.
I had no, I was in a place where I could do things. My anxiety actually lifted. I wasn't anxious for the first time in a long time. My God, you can get a lot done when you're not anxious. I finished things off that I'd been meaning to complete for years. I could look around, I could do things, I could plan for the future, but it was because I didn't have all those external stresses on me.
Yeah.
And then as things opened up again, I can feel them coming in, and that increases my pain levels. So I'm very much realizing that I'm perhaps not built, and I don't know whether many people are actually built for the modern lifestyle. And in actual fact, if I can just go, no, I'm not doing that, and not mind saying no, that it's going to do me the world of good.
Yeah.
And it's going to, because if in that moment I can be in so much less pain just because not as many people are asking me to do shit, then frankly, I need to be saying no and not worrying about saying no.
Yeah.
And looking after me and my brain and my pain.
100%. I think the level of expectations on us nowadays is unreal. Like, you look at the fact that with like rising prices of everything, like every family is practically forced into being a 2-income household, like now. And it's funny, like we kind of wanted that we wanted that for the sake of equality, but we've kind of ended up with it being something that, there's no choice in the matter now. But even down to the number of social connections and stuff we have and the frequency of those social connections, there's a very big difference between are you free or are you available? It's like and actually I was only thinking about this the other day. Sometimes when someone messaged me saying, are you free on this date? I really want to know what it's for before I commit. And it's like, but then you can't say, yeah, sure, what do you want to do? And then they say something that you really don't want to do. And it's like, no, I don't want to do that. And I wish we could just say that. I wish we could just say that. It's like, actually, you know what? I personally don't want to do that. Like, I'm sure that's great fun for you, but I personally don't want to do that. And it's like, okay, when we had the house phone, we were expected to answer the house phone when it rang. And if it didn't ring, no one was upset about it. If we didn't answer it, no one was upset about it. Then it's like we get Messenger, and it's like we expect people to text back within a certain amount of time. Then there's DMs coming through. Then there's DMs coming through on 7 different social media platforms, and it's and before you know, and the thing is, no one person is overwhelming you, but the collective it all is overwhelming you. And this is a running meme for me, because I say that basically, if I ever get to the point where I'm on my last spoon and I need to save that spoon for me, and someone basically messages me and says, can you do this? I will actually turn around and say to that person, look, I'm like, I've actually not got the spoons to take that on right now. It's nothing personal. I've just been doing too much. And almost every single time the person takes it personally, and almost every single time I then have to go and tend to that person's feeling with the spoon that I should have just given them to I shouldn't have done, because long-term boundaries matter, and we need to change the dialogue and change the understanding of these things. But I end up still using that bloody spoon that I was trying to maintain for myself to finish getting through the day, tending to this person's feelings. And do you know what I find really funny about the phrase selfishness is that anyone that accuses someone of being selfish is usually doing it because that person didn't do something for you, which is in turn selfish. It's like, oh, you're selfish because you didn't do this for me. It's like, well, you're selfish because you're upset with me because I didn't do something for you. It's such a kind of like circular reasoning, but yeah, I totally relate to that as well, because I was upset by the amount that this is going to sound like the wrong way round to most people, but I was upset by the amount of things that disappeared out of my work calendar when the pandemic hit. But I felt quite happy about some of the things that disappeared from the social calendar. I love my friends and I missed them. Like, and I got to the point of really missing them and really pining for them. But like the fact that there was like no weddings and no birthdays and all the rest of it, like honestly, I had my 39th birthday. I celebrated on stream. I mean, I celebrated my 40th on stream as well, but I also celebrated my 40th out the night before, and then I was a zombie on stream for the actual 40th. But I celebrated my 39th birthday on stream, and I loved it. Are you off?
Do you want a coffee?
Oh no, thanks. So I celebrated it on stream, and I kind of, you know, I loved it. Like I loved like the whole not having to. First of all, it was more acceptable to be the center of attention when you're on stream than when you're at your own birthday party, which makes no sense. But like I was just like. But secondly, I was like, okay, right. Well, if I want to leave, I just hit the end stream button and go to bed. I don't need to like personally say goodbye to every single person and then go back to the first one because you forgot who you said goodbye to and all the rest of that. It was significantly less exhausting. But those 2 years really gave me a chance to realize, no, when this starts happening again, I need to do this a little bit more at my rhythm, and that needs to be okay. And you know, and I've started saying that to my friends a lot now. It's like, look, I do want to see you again, like, but maybe in like 3 months, 6 months. It's like, not next week, because next week I'm going to be sleeping for the fact that I've just seen people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that kind of needing to recharge. I always say resting is a productive use of your time. So people think that because they're resting, they're not doing anything, so they're not being productive. But actually, no, what they're doing is recharging their batteries. Your phone, if you don't recharge it, it dies.
Yeah.
If you don't recharge your batteries, you're not going to be able to do anything as effectively later on. So resting is a productive use of your time. And so it's okay to rest, and it's okay to say, no, sorry, I need some downtime. And we absolutely need to normalize this, and we absolutely need it to be a thing where you can say, no, I can't do that. No, I'm not doing anything else. Yeah. But I can't go and do that because I need to rest. Yeah. And I've started saying that to people more. No, I'm sorry, that's my rest day. I have to book that in. And if I don't have that rest day, I will be wiped out for a week and a half. So I need to rest that day. Yeah. And more people are going, oh, right, yeah. Oh, no, okay, that makes sense. And it's happening. I think more people are realizing, because more people have been affected by things like long COVID. It's been in the news a lot more. So more people are starting to realize that actually, no, that's okay. And some people do need to rest. And just because they're not available when you want them to be available doesn't make them selfish. It just means that they're resting and looking after themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have to give a reason as to what you're doing, and that's not even helpful to another person anyway. Because if they say, oh, what else are you doing, and you're doing something with somebody they don't like, or you're doing something that it's like, well, now they're like, oh, you're choosing that over me. It's like, actually, no, I'm choosing the first thing that came to me, as opposed to choosing the more important one or trying to prioritize all of that. But I think we just so much it's that the expression, it's not about you, and I know like that's a bit of a passive aggressive expression sometimes, and I certainly use it that way to my mum. Sorry, mum. But it's not so much. It's so much time. It's not. And I think we need to like that that other expression, everybody is fighting about, like, nothing about be kind always. It's like we need to remember that, and you don't need to you shouldn't ever have to justify your time to somebody else as to why you can't do something or you don't want to do something. And the fact that in fact, actually, an easier way to say all of this is I don't want to do this should be as equally acceptable as saying I can't do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that, Is there anything else that you would like to add on chronic pain, on mental health, or on anything else you want to say?
Trying to overthink. The only other thing that really has made a difference to me over these last few years is the social side of things, like you were just talking about, and those social connections. And I got involved with a thing called camarados, which is a weird word. But they say a camarado is somewhere between a stranger and a friend.
All right.
And it's that moment where if you sat at a bus stop and you have a conversation with somebody and they go, oh, I'm having a really bad day. And you go, oh, sorry, mate. That's being that camarado, because you're not expected to fix them. You're not expected to do anything about it. but you've been there and you've sat alongside them and gone, yeah, that's a bit shit, that, mate, sorry. And it makes a world of difference to that person because somebody's listened to them and gone, yeah. And that permission to relate to people and not have to fix them has helped my spoon level significantly.
Yeah.
To accept that everyone's a bit shit sometimes. So if it's your turn to be a bit shit, be kind to yourself until it passes.
Yeah.
You know, and things like that. And the other thing that they say that's helped me out immensely is if someone is struggling, ask them to help you because it gives them a sense of purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are some of their principles, and they have these other principles as well, but these are the three main ones that make the world of difference in my life and actually help my brain to do things differently and bizarrely help me with my pain as well.
What I want to say on that one thing though is there's a little, the devil's in the dose, right? Because if I'm struggling, don't ask me to help you because it means I'm struggling. It usually means I'm struggling because I'm trying to help too many people. But like Face put something in chat before, which a couple of people have already shot him down on. I actually also sent you a DM last night, so shush. But saying you guys should have to be like me and never get Discord notifications because no one messages you, make life much easier. Do you know what? The devil's actually in the dose. Too many notifications is just as much of a problem. It's a different kind of problem, but it's just as much of a problem as not enough. And this is kind of like the message, like, again, it's like whatever you're struggling with, whether you've got no one reaching out to you or you've got everyone reaching out to you and you're just exhausted from it and you're still not helping, these things are all equally as valid. And it's not, it's like, you know, it's so it's all about finding that bloody sweet spot, which is different from person to person. And I know that makes us really, really difficult. But you know, we're also really, really lovely, and we're worth a little bit of difficult, you know. So that would be my final thought on it. Is where's the best place for people to find you, and whether they want to come and check out the stream or just chat with you on social media, where you know, ask you for help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you ask me for help, I'll give you a job. It's very simple. I
wish I was good at giving other people jobs. I'm terrible at...
So my Twitch channel is Petra Phoenix, so you can find me there. And I am Petra_Phoenix on Twitter. And that's the only social media I currently have because I got rid of them all for my brain.
Which is wise, and I should totally do, because then I'm doom scrolling on less platforms. But, you know, I just spam create everywhere, so...
Well, that's the only reason I now have Twitter, was to just so I could tell people what I was doing on my stream. That's the only reason, because I had got rid of that one as well. Yeah. And so I'm now trying to find that balance of using it effectively as a tool and not letting it use me. And trying to find that balance is a tricky one, but I'll get there.
Yeah, it's the good old posting ghost that I need to learn, you know, post it and then leave. But I mean, that doesn't work so well on Twitter because you end up in conversations, which is what it's supposed to be. But on all the others, I should just... Like, if I'm posting once a day, I should only really be on there once a day. But I've got it in my head that, and actually this has been proven, unfortunately, too many times. I've got it in my head that I will meet interesting people if I scroll social media. And you know what? I do. Like, I really do. And but you know, the other side of it, the one that worked for me though was turning my phone on to do not disturb, because I always thought I'd miss important phone calls, and I don't. So I don't miss important phone calls. I miss phone calls, usually from, like, you know, marketing agencies or whatever, but I don't miss anything important. And the important people know how to get past my do not disturb as well, and they use it for emergencies such as can I have a bottle of Coke or something? I don't know. Not naming any names, but only one of my children drinks Coke, so Joe, it's all you. But I've just named a name. But yeah, so that was the whole thing, is like, you know, it was like, okay, imagine if I put it on do not disturb, all the calls I'll miss. And then thankfully I didn't. Therefore, I've now got no intentions of putting my phone back on do disturb, because I do it sometimes if I'm expecting a call within a certain time period. But even then, in that time period, it's like buzz, 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 buzz. It could make a song out of it. But but on the flip side of it, if I do, like one of the guests from the marathon, I literally stumbled across him on Instagram because someone else mentioned him in a post the other day, and it's a guy who's just done 365 consecutive days of cold water swimming for his mental health. And I'm like, that sounds like a different story from like a different angle from stuff that we've talked about. So that helped. And therefore, unfortunately, I'm probably never, ever, ever going to close them all, because I don't want to. I can put my hand on my heart and say that I don't want to miss out on those possibilities of meeting people like that. And until I find a better way of doing that, that's my way.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and
That's
that
my
makes
excuse from
perfect
sticking
sense.
to it.
But I needed to. I needed to do it. I couldn't have carried on with the doom scrolling on all of the platforms because I was literally wasting hours. Like I was on my phone for 10 hours a day, just doom scrolling. And I was literally wasting my life scrolling through Facebook. And I wasn't making connections. I was just scrolling, getting annoyed at things, getting angry and getting stressed.
Yeah.
And if it had been in any way positive, then it wouldn't have been such a bad thing. But it wasn't. It was the constant. And often it was people close to me that were annoying me most. And so I just had to get rid of the whole thing. And it's definitely helped me out. But it's been interesting which people stayed in contact and which people haven't.
I'll put together a directory of awesome people worth meeting. It's called the Mental Health Marathon, Ultra Marathon, and it's on Friday the 7th and Saturday the 11th of June. People plug in my own event. Awesome. How dare I? That's shameless. It's been amazing. Thank you very much for joining me. Everybody in chat, can we get some love in chat for Petra, please? And thank you for joining me this morning. I'm glad that it worked out we didn't get any noise as far as I'm aware.
No, they seem to have stopped. They seem to have stopped as we started talking. So it's like almost as if they knew I was this close to going out and just going, when are you going to stop? Just please, for the love of God, stop doing things. But they seem to have stopped. So excellent. Let's hope they're finished now. Yeah. It's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks, it's driving me up the wall. The
last thing you need, I was going to say, you've already got chronic pains. You need chronic noise as well.
No, absolutely. I went and I tried to have a nap the other day. Just as I lay down, it was beep, beep, beep. This vehicle is reversing, and then just like constant digging, and then the house was shaking. And in the end, I just got up and walked around. I've got the keys to a local community centre, and I just went round and there was nobody using it. And I just went and curled up on a sofa in there, locked the door behind me, and just went because I just needed to sleep, and it was driving me up the wall. Yeah, absolutely up the wall. Took the little dog with me, curled up on the sofa, and just hid for a bit. Good
use of the community centre. All right, so thank you again, and we will obviously through chatting and stuff. We chat again soon.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much for having me, and hopefully I've made some sense because I often don't.
So much.